bad. Monday. Woo. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. I hope this time is a little bit better for everybody. Lou will make the recording available again. So yeah, so that you can share it with people that wanted to attend and couldn't attend, people that you think may benefit from the conversation. Again, for those that's joining for the first time, remember this is an interaction. Okay, I am talking a lot, but please feel free to put up your hand. This only works if you guys actually interact with me. If you join the conversation, because I can't read minds, I can talk to you about things that I think may be important, but ultimately see this as a, I don't know, a free coaching session. So I'm at your disposal. Use me, ask questions, interact, give your opinions. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. Okay, so welcome to the second Flaminglets Future Changemakers webinar. I think today I want to actually start off, before we start, our topic is self-care and boundaries in a broken system. I think that is from the survey that we sent out. That's the topic that most people wanted to hear about next. Thank you for those of you that completed the survey. But before we jump in, I thought I just wanted to reflect a little bit feedback from the previous session. Thank you so much for everybody that engaged, and thank you for the questions that you sent. That's the whole point. There was a few questions that came through anonymously, and I thought one of them, I just wanted to iterate sort of the conversation that I had, because there were subsequent further queries from other people as well, and I picked up a lot of anxiety amongst students, interns. There was comm service doctors on the previous call as well, that they're quite anxious about their careers. They feel huge pressure that every single thing that they do must somehow play into this bigger picture. If I'm not in the right job now, then I'm never going to be in the right job. It's like this tight timeline. And remember, I spoke about being willing to just get off the prescribed train and just take a breath. Just take a breath. I know you don't believe me, but I've got about 20 years in practice on all of you. There's time. It doesn't feel like it. And I know there's a lot of pressure, but there's time. And people struggling to get into MO jobs that they desperately want, specifically surgical MO jobs. They can only get jobs in peds or in family medicine. A job is a job. Experience is experience. Never, ever underestimate any experience that you can get. Getting the perfect job, post-com service, immediately. It doesn't happen for anyone. I always wanted to do surgery, but I spent 3 months, the 3 worst months of my life, in an ops and gynae post. But it was experience. It's experience that I now would not trade for the world. Experience is never wasted. So when you get anxious and when you feel like this train must go and it's not perfect and I'm not getting where I'm supposed to be, just take a breath. There is time, and do not underestimate. Sometimes the most random job experiences becomes the most valuable. It's all about how you approach it and what you're willing to learn and take from it. So now I've spoken a lot about that again, but I thought that is something that's a common theme that kept okay. Am I back?
Yes,
Am I
you're
back?
now. You're back
Yes,
now.
sorry, I was just dropped.
Yeah. I thought for a moment it was my computer, but no.
Okay, sorry. Okay,
No,
let's try again. Am I sharing? Can you see my screen?
you are sharing, yes.
And now the right screen. There we go. Okay, cool. So boundaries and self-care in a broken system. So people, let's just be honest here. I mean, we're not gonna solve this problem tonight. I wish I was coming to you with perfect solutions. This is something that I am still learning. I just told Lou I actually feel like a bit of a fraud. Here I am. I'm going to talk to you about boundaries and self-care, and my own wheels have been spinning in 50,000 directions the last week. I don't know if I'm coming or if I'm going. But talking about it and having the willingness and the curiosity to keep learning about it, I think is key. The more we talk about it, the easier it will become for all of us. And the better the chances that we can actually fix this problem. I think the most important thing is people coming to me and saying, I feel terrible because I'm not coping. I feel like a failure because I'm not coping. I feel weak because I'm not coping. It's not you. It's not you. What you're experiencing is an appropriate human emotion and an appropriate human reaction to a very, very, very challenging circumstance that you find yourself in. We have to, unfortunately, we have to acknowledge that the system that we work in and the way in which the system has been designed and is functioning is not always healthy and needs a lot of transformation and needs a lot of work. And I think part of the solution is having these types of conversations and having this openness. That's part of the conversation. But let's start with just acknowledging it's not you and it's not me, but it is our reality. Okay. So when we talk about self-care, I think there's a few very, very important distinctions that we have to make. And that is that self-care is not bubble baths and crystals, and it is not something else that you need to add to the to-do list, because heaven alone knows our to-do lists are too bloody long already. It is not another thing that you need to feel guilty about. But also, you are not going to bubble bath yourself out of the PTSD from, doing the work that you're doing, dealing with the stresses that you're dealing with. Self-care, real self-care, is actually a radical act. And it is an act that where you allow yourself to have agency. Having agency means having the ability to choose. And we underestimate the privilege and the power of having a choice. So I want you to sit a little bit with that. Self-care is having agency. In other words, having a choice and exercising that choice, giving yourself the option to choose, to say yes, to say no. And it is an act of advocacy because it sets an example. You doing something for yourself sets an example for colleagues, for patients, for family, for friends. So self-care can be so, I don't know, up in the air, but that's how I want you to think about self-care. All right. We've touched on this with our previous webinar as well. None of these things, I so wish it was easy. I wish there was a perfect recipe that I can give all of you. But unfortunately, even though I don't want this to be another thing on the to-do list, I really need you for it to land, that all of this asks of all of us to be willing to go inward. We need to be willing to do the work inside. Okay, we need to create the time to interrogate ourselves, look in the mirror ourselves, because what it's asking for is internally navigated values it's coming from me. That is where true choice, that's where true agency comes from. When something is internally navigated and it's not outwardly prescribed. So I'm not trying to fit in with the shoulds and I must and this and this. It is, I am following what my internal navigation system is telling me is true and it's right and it's nourishing and it's sustainable, etc., etc. So this self-care really is it should essentially, and I'm talking to myself here as well, but essentially, real self-care should be influencing all our decisions, from the smallest, silliest decisions to the big life decisions. Self-care actually should be a value system. And unfortunately, how we function, where we function in the hospitals, in medicine, it is not valued at all. And the only people that's going to change it is us. All right. In order to, the other thing that I think people often mistake is that we are scared that self-care is the opposite of resilience. Are we all just pansies? You know, are we just non-copers? Are we snowflakes? No. Yes, yeah, I mean, there's definitely, it can be. And I think we all have to work hard at building resilience, building that muscle of, uh, being comfortable with the uncomfortable. But real self-care, that internal navigation system has got nothing to do with resilience. In fact, I think it is a core ingredient of true resilience. The fact of the matter is that you cannot meditate yourself out of the pain of your reality, but you can transcend and you can transform. Meditation is a tool. Eating well is a tool. Resting is a tool. Um, having coaching, it's a tool, okay? But the real work is what you do with that tool. And that, again, it comes back to the inside job, how we use that to transcend and transform our experiences, our pain, our discomfort, our doubts, our guilt, our shame, all of that. Okay. In broad, I think if we talk about real, in inverted commas, self-care, right? We cannot do that without talking about boundaries. And I'm going to go a little bit into my understanding of boundaries or how I think about boundaries ourselves, because I think especially in medicine, that word it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare for people to figure that out, because we are supposed to be givers. We are supposed to be available 24/7. We cannot say no. Okay, so we'll chat a little bit about that. And I really want you to, when I've done with these few things, I really want you to interact with me and let's talk about it. Let's unpack it, how you experience it, where you get stuck. It is about self-compassion, and I don't mean this in a woo-woo, airy-fairy way. It is actually, I mean it very seriously, that it's ceasing to value the martyr mode that we live in, because we think, let me just kill myself a little bit more for X, Y, and Z, because I'm waiting for the gold star. I'm waiting for the epaulet. I'm waiting for the statue that's going to be erected in my honor. It's not freaking going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Being a martyr, putting yourself on the altar for something that is externally, what's the word that I'm looking for? That comes from outside of you. It's not worth it. And it's having compassion for yourself and saying, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I actually feeling? How can I shift this externally driven, putting myself on the altar, killing myself in the process, to a internally navigated, this is what I choose to do. This is the reasons why I'm doing something. How do we change all of that into, like I said, agency, advocacy, compassion, internally driven instead of externally dictated? I hope that makes sense. Like, yeah, okay. So all of that, it comes back to values. It comes back to, what do you value? Not what does the world value? What does the system value? What do you value? Okay. So boundaries. So disclaimer, I am terrible at it. I still am. I'm better than what I was. So this is me working with you. This is me learning with you. It's sharing the little bit that I find helpful. And I think that it's important to think about boundaries, because boundaries can be used, how can I say, almost like it's not supposed to be a band-aid. Like, I'm not coping anymore, so now I'm just saying no, 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 no. That's not a boundary. That's not healthy. That is reactionary. That is surviving. That is not solving the problem. That is not engaging in a healthy conversation or a negotiation. So boundaries are not supposed to be reactionary. It's not supposed to be self-defense. It's not supposed to be a band-aid. And I think we often get that wrong. So for me, I think one of the most valuable things that, I can't remember if I heard it or I've read it somewhere, but often the pause is the boundary. And what I mean by that is, so when you get a call and somebody is, will you do that? Is to say, you know what? Give me a day, I'll call you back tomorrow. When you read the email, put a star next to it, come back to it in 2 hours. It's actually buying yourself the time and the mental space and the mental energy to negotiate a yes, a no, a later. It opens the options. Okay. So just that for me is a powerful boundary, because again, we get back to agency, choice. Okay. It's not, I'm not reacting to something. I'm giving myself permission to pause, because no, a reflexive no, we have to remember that boundaries, why we struggle so much with boundaries, is that boundaries have a cost. A no, saying no, have a cost. We can't deny that. Saying no to certain things in your career may have a very real and tangible cost. That is just a fact of life. So sometimes we can't say no. We can't, for financial reasons, for medical legal reasons. We can't say no. But if we grant ourselves the pause to realize, okay, if I could, I would have said no, but I can't, fine. Bookmark that. Bookmark that so that you can say, in a year from now, I want to be closer to be able to saying no. So how am I going to change my circumstance to be able to say no? Sometimes it's a very natural progression. You go from a registrar to a consultant, so it's much easier to say no. So you're closer to that no. But not to forget those things when that internal navigation system goes off and say, I really freaking don't want to do that. Absolutely. If you can say no, practice saying the no. A no can be a full sentence. Practice saying the no. If you're unsure, practice to say yes, but not now. And if you absolutely have to say yes, but you feel it's a no, bookmark it to come back to it in the future. Boundaries is not, I think, boundaries can be, and I think it's not this rigid thing for me. I think it's fluid. It changes with time, it changes with age, it changes with circumstance. But it's engaging with that in a way that, again, feels like I have some agency here. And it's not externally bestowed upon you agency. It's not the system finally telling you you are now allowed to have agency. It comes from within. It comes from within. I am going to give myself the pause to think about it, evaluate it. And yes, I'm still maybe going to have to do what I have to do, but I'm going to do it with insight, with agency, and feeling that I'm not a victim. Hope this is making sense to all of you. Boundaries, I think, especially in how we work and where we work, when we set the boundaries, how we communicate it is of the utmost importance. And that is, again, where the pause is so important, because when we are tired, when we are stressed out, when we are burnt out, and we are working with a reflexive and a defensive no, because we have to have a boundary here, because otherwise we're going to crack. That's when we destroy relationships. That's when we lose opportunities. That's where, so when we have the pause and we can clearly communicate, what we want, why we want it, etc., it makes a hell of a difference. With boundaries, it's also incredibly, incredibly important to remember that guilt comes from the outside. Guilt comes from you trying to fit into a story that the world, that the system, that your seniors, that the whatever is telling you. So now you're like, oh my God, I have now said no, because the world says that if you do not say yes for every research presentation, you will be a failure and you will never make it and you will not get a registrar post. And now I'm feeling so guilty because now, no, that comes from the outside. Shame comes from the inside. Now I've internalized the guilt. And now I'm ashamed of myself. I feel like a failure. I've somehow not made it. If we go back to the internal navigation system, if we come back to the values, it makes it a lot easier to build resilience and to build a tolerance for the guilt, the shame, to recognize it, to see it, and to not fall into that trap. And I think a lot of times people forget to talk about that boundaries we always see as a no. But sometimes boundaries also should be loosened, because we can get so trapped in the way that we do things, and I am taking my stand and I will not. Where sometimes opportunity, and here I'm more talking about the opportunity of community, the opportunity to allow someone to care for you. Radical. Somebody to take care of you actually may require a loosening of your boundaries. A loosening to be able to say yes to being taken care of. Because we are terrible at saying no when we need to take care of other people. Yes, 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 yes. But as soon as somebody approaches us, let me take care of you. Let me help you. Let me. No, 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 I'm fine. No, don't worry about it. No, please, no. So it's thinking about boundaries also sometimes in that way. I know a lot of this sounds abstract, and I really hope that somehow you can integrate it and make it real and that this is making sense to you. So let's just, I'm actually going to stop here because, would it help if I go on? No, okay, let me go on a little bit. Then I'm going to check in with you guys about this boundary situation, if it's making sense. Okay, so values. So I keep coming back to this internally navigated, whatever. So values. Everybody's like, values. When you ask people what are your values, they would often say, I value family. I value community. I value, it's for me, I think when it comes to these things, think about values as verbs, and not nouns. So instead of saying, I value running. You say, I am a person that runs. Instead of saying, I value family, I am a person that values spending time with my family. I am a person that it's an action. It needs to translate into something tangible, something, it's not an amorphous idea outside of you, because that's how, as soon as it becomes an action, it becomes a more powerful measuring stick for where do I engage, where don't I engage, where is my yeses, where is my no's. I am a person that cares. Okay, how does that look? That means I am a person that listens. Okay? I am a person that, so actually trying to, yeah, get away from these big ideas. And again, ideas that often come from the world about things that you should be valuing, that should be important to you, to spending time with yourself and say, I want to be the person that, I am the person that. And how does that impact on my self-care? How does that impact on my boundaries? I find it for myself, I find it helpful reframing things like that. The broken can only change with us. It's the system, and it sounds like the mafia or the firm, but the system that we're operating in, it's made up out of people. And people are flawed, and people are struggling, and people are all having these, well, they're not having these conversations, but they should be having this conversation. So the only way the broken and the maladaptive and the unhealthy ways, it's up to us. And it's a slow process, but it's a ground up wave that builds. And I can already see with your generation how it's building and how it's building. With each generation, it's building and it's building. And it's amazing. So it's asking, how can we act creatively to build it better from the ground up? How can we look at crazy ass call rosters, and can we get together as a group and say, you know what, a 1 in 3 call, it's not working. It's not working for us. Can we say, I would rather do a half-day call so we are there more regularly, so we're there every day, but instead of 36 hours, I'm only there 12 hours. Can the group agree that there will always be cover, but instead of working 36 hours once a week, we would rather work 3 times a week for 12 hours? It's a ridiculous example, but I'm just saying. Other people may say, no, I just want to get it over with. It's a silly example, but you see what I'm saying is, I've had 2 friends, I think it's so cool. So they got married and she fell pregnant, and they actually split the maternity leave. The 4 months maternity leave, they split in 2. So she took the first 2 months maternity leave, and her husband took the second 2 months maternity leave, so that they can split and figure out childcare, so that they can both be involved. The system wouldn't allow him to take paternity leave. Yes, it should change. Yes, we should continue to advocate for it. But they came up with a creative solution where they worked with what they had, but it was driven by their internal value system. And so that, sorry, I just want to snooze this. Let me just dismiss it, sorry. It was driven by their internal navigating system. They came up with a creative solution, and actually, since they've done it, people have started looking more closely at paternity leave, and subsequently there's been a few people in the department that's actually been granted 2 weeks of paternity leave. So it's small changes, it's small shifts. How can we creatively actually do this? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And, there's still quite a few things that I want to share with you in terms of deliberate living, which is what we teach our patients and what I teach my patients in terms of self-care. But I first want to check in with you guys. about this whole is it making any sense, or am I talking complete nonsense? Is this, yeah, I don't know. Anybody with any thoughts, with any struggles?
Hi, Dr. Roodt. Sorry, I'm sitting in my car because I'm on
Hi,
call.
Chantal.
So here's me and my dinner on call.
Oh, shame, mate.
I wanted to say I really love the bit about like self-care is not the opposite of resilience. Because I think when I started out in med school, there was very much this like, how hard can you work? How far can you push yourself? Like, don't want to be a softie, don't want to tap out early sort of thing. And I think it took me till about fourth year to realize that like, if I did the self-care now, then I could be resilient later. Like when I
100%.
didn't take the time for the self-care, then when I got into like emotionally charged situations, then I was already tired and burnt out and like not able to give my all. Whereas if I actually took the time to go for the runs and like do my journaling and my meditation, then when I ended up in like a tough, like neonatal resusces and like emotionally difficult things for me, I had like more resilience to give. So I don't know. I think it's it goes so
nailed
nice.
it. You nailed it. Exactly. And I really want that to land for people. I really want that to land for people, because I think that is it's a dangerous thing, especially where we work, and senior staff are terrible sometimes at making people out as, put on your big old pants, grow a pair, toughen up. That's the language that we use, and it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. So I don't want us to think about self-care as woo-woo and a bonus, and like it's not. It is essential. It is absolutely essential. If you want to be a good and a present and an awake doctor, then that's what you need. That is what you need to do. In terms, did the bits about boundaries make any sense, or did I speak to deurmekaar?
No, I like the bit about boundaries. It makes a lot of sense. I think it's something I'm still struggling with, is where the boundaries lie for me in terms of like, I really want to be a team player and I don't want to let the team down. And there's always an extra mile to go. Like there's never not another thing that can be done. So I think it's just something I'm still like.
Would the pause help you? Does the pause in those?
Yeah, I think so. To be able to go, okay, I can come do that extra bit of work. I can go see that patient, but we've actually got like a tutorial now. I'm going to prepare for my tutorial. I'm going to go to my tutorial and then I'll come back afterwards. I'll do what I have to do. So I think the pause also does help, but also to know that we're not going to be, I think sometimes, and this is very much from a student perspective, and I feel like I'm ranting now, but sometimes I feel like we get used as like little ward work monkeys to like run around the hospital and just take bloods and do ECGs, which was a learning experience like a couple of years ago. But I feel like it's no longer a learning experience to like put up drips and take bloods. It's got to get done by someone.
Oh, no. Yeah, so I think that is the challenge, and I think it is very hard to negotiate in those things. But I think there is also a time where you do things to a certain point, and then you actually take somebody aside and say, I'm more than willing to do this, but I have to prepare for this test. So, and it's hard, and you're gonna hate it, and you're gonna feel like you're going to die the first time that you do it. But it's a muscle that we need to learn how to exercise, and giving yourself that pause to say, I don't have to say yes immediately. I don't have to say no immediately. Let me just take a breath. And maybe I'm still going to have to say yes, but like I say, just the bookmark. Next year, this time, it should be a little bit easier for me to say no, or to negotiate, to have the agency to negotiate. I think if that lands, I think you've already come a long way. We've got a hand up there.
Yes, it's me.
Yes, there you go.
I just wanted to add on to what Chantal said. And I think like from my experience as a final year, I do think that there's sort of many expectations that you've got to fulfill. Like to the younger students, you're maybe a mentor and they look up to you and they come to you and ask you questions and maybe help with ward work. And then also the sisters also ask you to do a lot things, and you've obviously got to see patients from the consultants and all these things, like it's very easy to get overwhelmed by all the different roles that you've got to fulfill. But I do think the setting of boundaries is something that's really important. Like maybe when juniors come to you to like help with bloods or something, you could always say like, maybe try it first. If you struggle, ask someone else on the team, or maybe like even some of the sisters to say, listen, I'll do it after the ward round. I've just got other things to do that are kind of top priority at the moment, but also just learning to rely on other people while still being that team player.
Yes, and it's and again, it's filling the cup, right? It's filling the cup, because if you just keep running, you're not filling the cup. At some point, I promise you, you're going to lose it, and you're going to yell at someone, and you're going to become the person that you are scared of, and you're going to become the person that you feel uncomfortable at. You're going to become the person that you hate, right? So it's having that. I need to fill my cup because I am a person that cares. So that means I must be a person that sleeps. I must be a person that eat well. I must be a person that, it's kind of that sort of, that's really, really important. Is there anybody else that's got anything on the boundaries specifically? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to just something that, so we've been doing these webinars for a while with Project Flamingo, and I call it the deliberate living principles. So this is also what I teach my patients in my private practice, and I find it incredibly useful with the cancer patients to get them out of their floating heads and back into their body. Is how do we actually re-inhibit our bodies? How do we stop being so do-driven, this-driven, list-driven? And I know it feels like a list, but it's not supposed to be a list. And I always tell people, if you get one thing right in a week, it's moving forward. If you're not, it's not a 10-point list that you have to tick off every day. That's not what it is. It's a principle about getting more deliberate with the choices that we make, getting more deliberate with the way that we live our lives. It's a way to get more deliberate about how we inhabit our body. And this becomes really, really important when we work with cancer patients, particularly breast cancer patients. So the first thing, obviously, is sleep. You guys, sleep. The most important repair work that you can do. There are so many studies coming out with the importance of sleep. How are you going to teach this to people if you are not sleeping? And I know you're on call and that's going to be your life, but you can work on sleep hygiene. You can avoid revenge awake staying, like when you're not on call and now you have to stay up till 2 o'clock because you need to watch Netflix, because you need to feel like you need to relax because you have been working. Start focusing, start working at a young age. I've left it way too late. Just start working on sleep hygiene. Stop feeling guilty about sleep, for heaven's sake. It's not a competition. How little sleep we need, how little you can get away with. It's absolute nonsense. And it's really important that we value it so that we can teach it to our patients. Morning rituals. I know it's difficult, especially where you are now, but this, I think, comes in with setting the values, even if it's 5 seconds, 2 seconds. When I wake up, how do I intend to, what's my intention for this day? I am a person that will, okay, set an intention for the day. Don't grab your phone immediately, just a breath, a short meditation, something for yourself so that your day actually starts with yourself, not with the world, not with everybody wanting a piece of you, but with yourself. And it's not an hour-long meditation. It's literally just a moment of intention, a moment of being deliberate, a moment of awareness that makes a hell of a difference. Eating mindfully. So there isn't, the perfect diet does not exist. We are all individuals, but I mean, like Chantal sitting there now in her car, that can be an act of self-care. A massive act of self-care, actually when you're on call, not running, eating, actually saying, I am a human being. I can take 5 minutes. I can sit in a quiet corner. I can chew my food. I can, it is a human right to do that. I'm not saying take an hour-long lunch break during a resuscitation. We all have brains. We all have emotional intelligence, but being present when we do simple things like eating, like walking, it actually it's a wonderful way of resetting your nervous system, of gathering yourself towards yourself. Make sure it's good, clean, green, all of those things, but just being present with it already is such a big step in towards self-care. Movement, you don't have to be running marathons, but for heaven's sake, do something else that's walking up and down the hospital corridors. And I'm so guilty of this. But for stress relief, for stress management, model it for your patients. Not freaking, what's that crazy things that people do, the heavy, I don't know, people that absolutely go nuts. No, it's simple. It's stretching, it's moving. And again, it comes back to the awareness of your body, re-inhabiting your body, actually being present when you're doing something. It's all about bringing you back to the present moment, doing it deliberately, doing it mindfully, getting out of your head, being very proactive with dealing with negative emotions. This is where the loosening of the boundaries come in, being able to ask for help, okay? Being able to name emotions, being able to face what you're feeling, because we tend to shove it in a dark corner and then it comes to bite you. So to deliberately develop a habit from young, from where you are now in your careers, what do I need in order to name what I'm feeling, to deal with what I'm feeling? Do I need a coach? Do I need a therapist? Is there a special friend that I can make responsible where I can say we need to share once a week, we need a check-in, we need to deal with these things. These things build up, and the longer you shove it, the harder it's going to bite. We need to find joy. We are so bad at actually embracing joy and finding joy because we're all about work. We're all about achievement. We're all about the next thing that needs to be done, that we actually unlearn. We unlearn joy. And it's terrible. It's terrible for us. So have fun, make a joke, be ridiculous, be silly. And I also think when you work in medicine, you almost, because you see so much crap, you very often, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm almost too scared to be joyful because I'm just waiting for the next crisis to come. It's a terrible way of living, and we need to hold each other responsible also for joy and just silliness and just being, and reminding our patients, how to find it, to rediscover it, and to actually make it a priority, to make it a value, to make it part of that internal navigation system. I'm always going to add spirituality. It can look any way you want to. You don't even have to call it spirituality, but I guess it is that value system, and it is that something mysterious, mystical, something that's bigger, something that's calling you, something that's pulling you, something that's getting you through the hard times, something that feeds your soul, however that looks for you. Make time to nurture it, to develop it, to be very deliberate about it. Use that to fill your cup, okay? And then, of course, serving others. And I know you do it all day, every day, but not to do it as a job. And I think that's where our previous talk, is relevant. Doing it deliberately and doing it with agency and doing it for the right reasons and being present and being very deliberate about how you go about. If you do it right, you will always get more out of the encounter than what you give. And hopefully by doing all these tiny little things. Sometimes we get nothing right. Sometimes we get 5 out of the 9 right, whatever. But to get us closer to wholehearted living, to actually be present in our own lives. Yeah, to be livers of life so that we can be in the healing business, not in the ginormous to-do list business. Yeah, I hope that helps a little bit. I don't know if anybody wants to share what they find helpful doing or spending time on, or in terms of coping. And how do you think our patient sees us? If we act like machines, we behave like machines, do you think they believe things we tell them? Do you think they really believe if they don't see our humanity? I think that's a mistake we often make. It's because we're so scared to show them our humanity and to model being a human being. Is actually, instead of building trust, we break trust. And it's something that yeah, I think we often inadvertently get wrong. Chantal, do you want to say something? I see you on.
No, shame. I just didn't want you to feel like you were talking to no one that was nodding when I was agreeing with
you. You're sweet. You're very sweet.
I wanted you to see me nod.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, is there anybody, any thoughts, any questions, any struggles? It doesn't have to do, it can be anything. It doesn't have to do anything to do with today's talk, anything that anybody wants to bring up that you've been struggling with, a question that you've had. Remember, you can actually email the questions anonymously if you don't want to speak up, if you're too shy. Yes. Is it Miss Mejuffrouw Turner? Yes.
That sounds very Afrikaans.
Yeah.
Hi, Doctor. First of all,
Hi.
thanks for sharing. I think it's yeah, really great to just hear from someone that already has so much experience in the field and all of this. I think I just want to like highlight what stood out to me when you mentioned about like we also have a responsibility towards each other to like remind each other to be joyful as well and be human. I think like being part of a work community, like even now as students, we're already part of the work community, but just like
Yes.
sometimes even if you don't have a lot to give to other people, just scraping that little bit of joy, whatever you can for the day, even if it's just like a few smiles. Like I found sometimes I can't necessarily
100%.
energize like myself all the way, but just being like, it can literally be as plain as greeting a sister and she greets you back friendly. Like sometimes it's those small things. And I think like that's something powerful to remember, that all of us actually have like that capability. And then there's been times where if you actually like foster that supportive environment, even like in the smallest way, it doesn't have to be a deliberate, like we're telling each other we're going to be a supportive work team.
No.
But sometimes like when you can't show up your best self, then those people that you sort of help energize on other days, like sort of lift you up. Or that's how, yeah, how I've experienced it. And I think that's very,
100%.
very helpful.
No, and it's looking after those relationships and looking after each other and looking out for each other. So that 100%, you have it 100%. Marlu. Is it Marlu? Someone's hand is up.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
No,
yes. Okay.
I want to raise a point on. Sorry, I was driving as well. So my camera's not on. But I want to raise a point which you mentioned in the beginning of the talk now about just kind of, and I think we touched on it last week, and I've had really good conversations about it with some people in the past month about just joining the rat race in getting the perfect next job. And I feel, I don't know, I think for those of us who's final years or maybe interns, comserves, maybe you're already post comserve, I think there's like such a pressure in doing what is right, getting the right placements, getting the right jobs, when to write primaries. Even, do you even have to specialize? Oh, but I have to specialize because it's not good enough if I don't specialize. And I think there's such a stigma around it, and there's such pressure. And I feel like it's been getting more and more lately. Speaking with so many people post comserves, and people are just frantically searching for the next thing to do. And I've seen how self-care and how people crash. They crash. They give up medicine. They because they put the expectations from others on themselves. And
So
I think
that's externally dictated instead of internally navigated, right?
Yes.
Marlon, and I think it's so important. I really wanted to land, and I want you guys to hear me and spread it. I know you're not believing me. You're like, yeah, whatever. You've got time, and there is no wasted experience. You have to mature as a doctor. It sounds crazy, but if you want to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, you will benefit from working in a day hospital. You will, if you do it with the right attitude, because you will gain a maturity as a clinician, dealing with long lines of people, making diagnoses without resources, learning how to explain difficult concepts to people that you don't know how to communicate with, building a network with nursing staff. No experience is wasted. It all depends on how you approach it. You can write a research paper if you really have to, but people must get it out of their heads that if it's not perfect immediately, then there's something wrong, and there's something wrong with me, and I'm wasting time. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. You have a career of 40 years ahead of you. There's time, and there's a lot to be said for maturing as a clinician, and that's not necessarily in the field that you're going to end up in. So have patience, have kindness, have self-compassion. Take a breath, calm down, and you can come vent on this group. It's fine, but we'll remind you. But I think I can just see the anxiety levels is through the roof. Okay, and it doesn't have to be.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Roodt.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, Lou, do you maybe have something to add? You're as an outside observer, somebody that's not necessarily, come from medicine, in medicine.
Yeah, I think these principles apply whether you're in your industry or whichever industry. I think the world's just got to that point where if we don't look after ourselves and each other, what the hell are we actually going to have left? I think you guys, I've been just learning about student life, medical student life, learning about medicine in general now the last year or so. It's highly pressurized. It from the outside, it looks hellish, but you deal with healing, which is a kind of sometimes a little bit weird to see. But knowing that there's these spaces and that the younger generation, if I want to call it that, the guys coming up now are cognizant of this and are looking for the answers, then I think that's always that's always a good thing, that and that it's universally applicable, whether you leave medicine or stay in medicine or do whatever. These principles apply, and it's just been very interesting to learn, with everyone. So thank you for that.
Okay, so if nobody else has anything to say now, I think we can call it. That's perfect. We've almost been busy an hour. Like I say, if you think about something, please don't hesitate to send your questions. And I can give you a call, send a contact number, whatever, and also suggestions for what you want to talk about next. Share the presentation, share it if you think people will benefit from it or not benefit from it or whatever. Feedback's really important. Listen, this is only going to work if you actually give me feedback. So if you think I'm talking nonsense, You must please tell me. You want to say, no, we rather want a breast cancer lecture, then fine, we'll do that. But feedback, because that's the only way we're going to keep it useful. All right.
I'll share that that poll again for everyone to give their feedback, because we can kind of learn from that.
Okay.
Brilliant. Okay.
Thanks, people. Go self-care. Go self-care. Okay. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.